Okay, I say I can also record. Anyway, so I've started recording. So as I indicated to you in the schedule, today I'll be giving you feedback on T4, and I still need to finalize on the marking. And once I do, I'm going to share all your marks. I'm going to share the marks for you till date. I'm going to start, before I go into the memo itself, a couple of things that I want to emphasize. One, I'm going to start from the instructions provided on the question and on the paper, which, and if there's something that I keep emphasizing to the class, is the need to always carefully go through details. The first one says, and I'm emphasizing this so that mistakes many people make, even though I've not marked, but I've gone through all the scripts and I've seen obvious mistakes so far. So that's why I'm emphasizing this, because many didn't bother reading the instructions, or they didn't carefully digest to understand, and they just went ahead to do what they felt like. So one, answer all questions. That should be obvious. Two, it's not just late submission, plagiarism. So it seems some didn't understand the meaning of plagiarism, which I believe is indicated from your year one till date. So plagiarism is not just about copying your colleagues, but it's about just copying and pasting. So a huge number of students just copied and pasted things from my notes directly to me. If I wrote the note, I know what's in my notes. Remember that. So many just copied and pasted. Meanwhile, the essence of the test is for your own good, for you to internalize what has been taught, and then for you to interpret it in your own way. So it is essential for you to write things in your own words. But many students just copied and pasted my words, the diagrams. Others went on the internet, just copied and pasted without internalizing. But remember, when you internalize things, it's going to stick more than just copying and pasting. So that's why that was put there. So I made that clear. Use Microsoft Word to create your submission. I indicated that. The final part, I'm still trying to figure out some of the students who did that, because how can I identify who, you need to remember that the question, your answers were printed, even though you sent it via email, but now I need to go backtrack and check who submitted, because I've got a number of students who did not write their full names. They didn't write anything. And question 5 clearly says, type out your full names, student number in the title page. So every single instruction is given for a reason. So that was why I've taken my time to read through that, so that those who didn't follow those instructions won't do the same, as FISA is fast approaching. Unless I forget, talking about FISA, a couple of things that I want to state about FISA. As we indicated in one of our early classes, FISA will be written in July. I'm waiting on the coordinator on the BTech coordinator to give us, I don't know whose mic is that. Can we mute our mics, please? So as I was saying, I'm just waiting on the coordinator to give us the timetable, but for sure it's happening in July. July is just a month away. Secondly, it's going to, for all exit courses, meaning for those who will be graduating for their diploma, and for your class, you graduating for your BTech, you'll be writing your assessments on campus. So those who have traveled, they need to start thinking and making preparation right from now. They need to start doing that, because I know the tendency of students is it's only when it's a day or 2 to assessment, that then you start making plans, and then you say you've sent an email, nobody's responding, and the rest. So start making plans now. You've been informed. I informed you a week or 2, or I can't remember when we started classes. I informed you that, and then I'm reiterating that now. And then um, finally, for now, if I remember any other thing, I'm going to let you know later on. I'm just telling you what I've written out here. So finally, for now, just as I've also indicated in when we are having face-to-face classes, when it comes to your assessment, PIC400S assessment, your production engineering assessment, you'll be allowed to use Excel for 2 things only. Because, and I'm saying for 2 things only, because some want to play smart and use Excel for what they are required not to use Excel for, because Excel will make your life much easier. But part of the assessment is we are assessing how you are able to tackle these issues. So that's why, so take note, if you use Microsoft Excel for what you are not required to use Microsoft Excel for, it's not going to be marked. So 2 things which I'm going to reiterate, that Microsoft Excel will only be allowed to be used for in your assessment are your optimization assessment. And by that optimization assessment, I mean for your, which you did already in terms of your take-home assessment. You're going to be, for your using, what do you call it now? Using your solver, so that you'll be allowed to do that. And secondly, for your IRR, that's for your, or your DCFRR, that's for your profitability analysis. So those are the 2 things that if they come out. Andy, can you please mute your mic? I don't know who else's mic is on, but with mic on, there'll be a lot of background noise. So if you can mute our mic now, and then when I start taking us through the feedback, if you have any question, you can raise your hand, and then you unmute your mic. All right, so those are the things that I want to make clear ahead of time. So if there is the need to always stick to instructions. Don't create your own instructions, follow the instructions you've been given by the lecturer. Remember, these instructions are in line with EXA requirements, the university requirements, etc. So please take note of that. Any question before I move on? All right. So the other thing, yeah, lest I forget, and if I don't do this by next week Monday, class rep Kevin, kindly remind me. What I want to do is, for all the assessments, I believe by the end of today we will be able to say that I've given you feedback on all assessments. My class rep gave you personal feedback on some assessments, and I'm giving you general feedback now. So what I will do by next week is I'm going to upload the memos for the assessments that you've been given. So even though you've been given feedback, I'm going to upload the memo on Blackboard as well. And I'll see if I can also send them on WhatsApp, so that you can use them to prepare for your visa. Are we clear on that?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. So I'll upload memo, and I'm also taking my note too, and also send via WhatsApp. I'll see if I can do that, because the challenge with WhatsApp is, for some of the assessments, quite a number of you cannot open on your phone. For example, if it's on Excel, there are some phones that cannot open them. So that's why I'll be saying that the first point of call is your Blackboard. All right, moving on. So the first question is straightforward. briefly describe what qualifies a property for depreciation. So I just need those three qualities. It must be used for the production, or even if your answer is just about production, we'll know that income will follow. So it must be it must have a determinable life longer than 1 year. It must lose value over time. So those are the things that I'm expecting there. So I'll go through the first 4 questions, and then if anyone has a query, you can unmute and then ask before we move on to the next set of questions. So 1 should be straightforward. Second question, how is depreciation tax linked? So once you hear, so a couple of things that I wanted to see here is the fact that, as we've indicated in class and also in the note, that for your depreciation is not bringing, even though you're calculating value of money in depreciation, but the money isn't coming into your account. It's not coming into the account of the industry, of the company, but rather it reduces the tax that will be paid to the Internal Revenue Service, or SAS as we call it. So that's what it does. The other thing I expect to see here, so I expect to see that is not doing that. So that's what I expect to see here. And the other explanation is the fact that if your productivity is reducing, it means that your income is reducing. So, and if your income is reducing, and since your tax is based on income, so since your tax is based on your income, so if the income is reducing, the tax to be paid should also reduce. So that's how it's tax linked. So that's question 2. Question 3, why does compound interest result in exponential increase as opposed to the simple interest method? So in the simple interest method, all you're doing is the interest is calculated on the principal or the capital, what is borrowed at the beginning of the project. But for the compound interest, the interest is both on the capital and the interest to be paid. So compound looks at, excuse me, the P, the present, and it also looks at everything happening in the future. So based on that, that's why it's exponential. So that's the A part of question 3. The second part of question 3 is, why is interest included in the profitability analysis of business? Remember, since it's about profitability, looks at now and then estimates into the future. So profitability works with the future and the present. So if profitability does that, analysis does that, so inevitably you're looking at time value of money. So that's why interest is included. So interest is included in your profitability analysis, or accurate profitability analysis, in order to cater for time value of money. So in order to cater for that, or also to quantify the fact that the fund that you are borrowing could have been used for many other things. So you need to pay it. So it's the charges for the use of funds. So any way you describe it, so those are the answers that, or that's the answer that I'm expecting from there. So question 4, at what point in the life of a business or project does the book value of a property or equipment equals the salvage value? If you look at all the calculations, examples we did in class, you see that it's usually at the end of the plant life. At the end of the plant life, we said yes. In some cases, it might even be less, it might be more, but theoretically speaking, it happens at the end of the plant life. So those are questions 1 to 4. Any questions before we move on to the next section of the questions? Anything that needs clarification? Any question, class?
Also, for
Kevin?
me, it's quite clear.
Okay, is it clear? I see someone is asking for you that to let her in into the class. So maybe you need to deactivate the thing of people waiting or on Zoom. Someone is saying that you need to let her into the class.
Okay.
That's Andiswa. All right, because she was in class before, I don't know why she's having a problem now. Is that okay? So I've gotten a any other is are we all clear?
All clear, sir.
All right, okay. All righty. So can I move on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. And remember, as I've always indicated, for those who might have issues with the microphone on their phone or computer or whatever, or you're too shy to speak, don't hesitate to type in your query or your question in the chat. All right, so let's move on. 5. It says with all right. Was someone asking a question? Okay, so I'll move on. Question 5, it says, with respect to cash flow, 1, how do you differentiate credit from debit? So it's simple term. Just think about if you have debit card or credit card, think about that. So debit is money going out of the account, whereas a credit is money coming in. So remember, when you have a credit card, it's not your fund, it's not yours, even though you have it's a credit. So that's why we say it's money coming in, debit is money going out. And in terms of the examples, quite anything that is expenditure. So that's why you see in bracket I indicated expenditures or costs. So what that means is that it might be, and that's why I also put etc., etc. there. So your answers are not limited to what I've indicated here. So as long as it's a cost, as long as it's an expenditure, it's a debit. Example. Same goes for credit. And then I'm sure you're familiar with this diagram. It's the third. It says the third part of the question says support your answer with a simple schematic diagram. So every time you have a simple schematic diagram, remember it's as it is simple. You don't need anything fancy. So we just want to see those, for example, you see arrows. So for example, if you just draw a line, as we've always indicated, as you know, in chemical engineering, if you don't have arrows, without the arrows, you can't show direction. So if you just have a line, we wouldn't know, is it going right or going left? And in terms of cash flow, as the name is, there needs to be a direction. We need to know, is it going out? Is it coming in? So that's why it's essential. So when I'm marking this, I'm looking at arrows. So where the arrows, what direction are the arrows going in through? Are the arrows coming in or out? Alrighty. So let's move on to question 6. Is everyone seeing the screen?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
All right, perfect. So we move on. Question 6. It says, and let's look at this carefully, and let's listen carefully here. So it says, during the last period of your, and there are some safe assumptions that should be made here. Safe assumption, we'll see as we move on. So during, and also, so take one, safe assumption, we'll see that as we move on. Secondly, in terms of when we draw those arrows, some of the things that I'm looking at as well is, one of the things I'm looking at will also be the size of the arrow. In terms of the size of the arrow, it does not mean that I'm going to take a tape rule or a ruler to start measuring, but I need a good visual representation. For example, it says that you receive equal monthly stipends, October, November, December. So it's coming in, so it should be on the positive axis. That's one. Second thing I'm looking at is equal. So if it's equal, this arrow should be all the same size. So you can't draw one short, one tall, one tiny. No, they have to be all the same size. So those are things that I'm looking at. And the other thing I'm looking at definitely will be your notation. You need to indicate, because if you don't, how do I know that how do I know that yours is it's October, November, December that you've chosen? Especially look at in an instance like this, we have 2 November, December. We have one here, one there. So one of the answers that I've seen, the person actually made it very clear in terms of the assumption. The person wrote 2019 here, wrote 2020 here. So those are some of the things you should do to make it clear. So that's that. So that's the first part of the question. October, November, December. It says you lived with your relatives, so there are no living expenses. So what this means is that I don't expect to see any arrows dropping here. And then it says you use the money to pay your school fees for the next academic year in January. So you see here, you'll see as we move on. I want to take note of this. And in some cases, some people didn't show arrows. I'm going to show you the reason why it's essential for you to show arrows, especially for things like this. Because look at January and February. What happened? There were 2 payments. So 2 things that so with the 2 arrows, you'll be able to show the 2 payments. The second thing that we'll be looking at is the length of the arrows. So in January, what happened? School fees was paid. In February, clothing account was paid, and also living expenses were paid. I want to take note of something. For the word we saw says living expense was paid throughout the year. So you see the arrows, the first arrows are the same size. So that's showing the living expense. And in January, because of the fees, safe assumption, except if you're in the wrong field or in the wrong place, safe assumption, your clothing account should be less than your school fees. Are we in agreement to that?
Yes, sir.
So that should be. Are you seeing the details in the questions, or as they put it, devils in the details? So are you seeing that? So those are the things that I'm looking for here. So you could see that's why I will expect this to be longer than that. So your assumptions need to be safe. Your assumptions need to be well informed. So that's January, February. And then let's move on. You also use this money for your monthly expenses during this academic year, which are assumed to be cash flows once per month from January to December. So that's this 1, 2, 3 up until December. So that's so that we've indicated those cash flows. I know some of you used Microsoft Excel to do it, but one of the things that I expect from you is think about for this assessment, in as much that you use your but in as much that definitely you're not going to be penalized for using Microsoft Excel to draw it. But the bottom line is things like this would not be clear from Microsoft Excel. The fact that you have 2 sets of outflows here, for example, those wouldn't be clear from your Microsoft Excel. Are we all clear on
Sorry,
that?
so I've got a question about that one. If for January you've got 2 arrows,
Yeah.
can you also put the short arrow next to the long arrow for January, or does it have to be on the same line?
Remember, since it's coming from the same person, it's the same account, so that's why, and so that's why I would assume that everything, because remember, if you go back to the cash flow note, we said that everything normally, you remember in cash flow diagrams, the one we looked at in the class, we talked about oftentimes this should be per year. And we said, what do you have? You have one arrow, one line, but that one line should account for everything that took place within that period. So that is why I wouldn't expect you to see multiple arrows within a period. You should have everything in a period on one line.
Okay, sir.
Is that clear?
So,
Yes, that's clear.
Yeah. So that's why,
before you move,
yeah.
so before you move on, sir, regarding to that, using one arrow to show what happened in that period, can we also assume that we have an accumulative cost in, say, for instance, in January, instead of showing two arrows there, but just showing a cumulative cost of January?
Yeah. So remember, I said I spoke to that already, Penyo, which is the fact that yes, you can, but the bottom line is from this, how do I see that except you write it out somewhere? So how do I see that representation that there are two major things happening? Yes, you can show the cumulative, but always, whenever you see a question, ask yourself that for the person to have indicated that 1, 2, 3 happened here, so certain things need to be seen. And secondly, remember, since it's a diagrammatic representation, one needs to be able to read, look at the picture, and make a story from the picture. So if I don't see those two things there, let's just take it. I send this picture to someone else. How will the person, without the person reading the story, how will the person know that there are two major things that happen there? So for example, anyone that sees this picture will know there's something that happened from October, November, December, up until there, because you've indicated all these months here. So another thing that I will expect to see is somewhere here, I'll write month. I'll write month here. So someone should be able to read a story from the picture. So, but if you just show cumulative there, you've said a story, but the assumption from the story will be that it was just one major thing that happened. So you need to answer the question based on the context that have been provided. So because, for example, you might also say, but usually the CFD we are taught in class is per year. So I might as well just show, since all these are taking place in 1 year, I might as well show one arrow for them. Since all these are taking place in a year, I might as well show one arrow for them. Do you understand what I'm saying, Penyo?
Yes, I understand, sir.
So yeah, so context is very, very important. So we could have done that based on the fact that, oh, but in terms of this context, we need to, that is very essential. Any other question before we move on? So shall I move on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have 6 minutes to go here. Class captain Kevin, I'm assuming once Zoom kicks us out of this session, we can just relog in using the same link, right?
Yes, sir, we can do that.
All right, thank you. So let's move on. Please, any other questions? Remember, in a way, we are revising already, and certain things, if you leave them till late, that's when you have issues. All right, okay, so let's move on. Question 7, using a well labeled. So take note of that as well, well labeled schematic diagram. Also, since it's schematic, I don't need you to have something fancy. And also going back to what I said earlier on, some just copied and pasted what I gave them in the note. So remember, if you don't start internalizing now, will you have that for FISA to copy and paste? But if you've internalized, if you've practiced it by yourself, when it comes to FISA or any other assessment, it shouldn't be a struggle. So that's why it's essential to do that. So that's the well-labeled diagram that I'm expecting from you. Let me just say something like this. Let me go back to the question. So it says commissioning to decommissioning. So one of the things you might also want, another thing you might just want to show is point A, commissioning. So we might just want to write point A, commissioning. So those are some of the things that I might not have written here that you can also write. Point A, commissioning. Point F, decommissioning. So that's that. Let's let's move on in the question. Show the, okay, cumulative cash flow, and then provide a brief description of the diagram. So we've started providing the brief description. One of it is A, commissioning, F, decommissioning. We also move on. All the story I've written here, I don't think I need to read through the story because you have that story to yourself. So any question, I don't need to read through that story. Any question on that before we move on?
Sir, can you please explain the part where from B to C there is a straight line somewhere?
This straight line, or where?
Yes, there.
Yeah, so there, see, it says it's there already. The heavy flow of capital to build the plant and provide funds for startup. So you could see here that B was, everything was going, anytime, like you do any graph, anytime there is a sharp slope like that, there is something, so it's either, so when you have a sharp slope, it's saying something that it's drastic. So in this now here is showing that something drastically is happening here. And that's one. Secondly, it's also showing you that it's happening once. So this is a once-off thing that is happening. It says working capital. So remember, oftentimes we talk about capital. Capital is once-off. So that is that major surge here.
Okay.
Yeah, and C to D, you could see it's something incremental. So different things, incremental. Here, this point here to there, something major happened here. So it's a surge. So that's what we have here.
Oh, okay.
Is that clear?
Yes, sir, it is. Thank you.
All right. Any other query before we move on? All right. So, okay, we have less than a minute. So I think we should just let that finish and then we'll move on. So question 8 is on, as a production engineer, which of the following profitability assessment methods will you adopt in your company? So we have provided 4 of them: NPV, net present value; ROI, return on investment; PBP, payback period; and you have your DCFRR there. So you have 4 of them. So the obvious thing that I expect you to look out for, what are those obvious things? Does it include time value of money or not? So that's what we are looking at. So based on that, we've said I will choose NPV and DCFRR because they consider time value of money, while the other 2 do not consider time value of money. So if they don't consider time value of money, what it means is they'll incorrectly state economic efficiency. Remember, anytime we are dealing with cost, it's always a thing of you're forecasting, you're doing something into the future, or you are discounting future into the present. So based on that, it's inherently associated with several uncertainties. Excuse me. So if you have several uncertainties,